Welcome back to Resistance Chicks. We are your hosts, Leah and Michelle. Today's Tuesday, August 8th, 2017. I want you to get right into what does this mean? Gulag, Google Manifesto. Why is that up there?
Well, because if you haven't heard yet, and I think the whole world has heard, that there is a dissenter amongst the
powers that be,
in Google. And his name is James Damore, and he wrote a manifesto. He wrote a memo. And it's really just blown up in everybody's faces, and he has been fired.
You're fired. If you are working for Google and you go against what they, their box that they want to put everybody in, then you get canned.
But what's so interesting about this is that every single headline, even Fox News, calls him the anti-diversity, it calls it the anti-diversity memo. It is so, I'm starting to get, this is when I start to get my like hangry eyes out, and I just have to calm down. Like I have to breathe. Right? Because like it's so wrong what they have done to this poor guy. I have read parts of this memo. Here it is. Google's ideological echo chamber. How bias clouds our thinking about diversity and inclusion. The memo is about diversity and inclusion, but what he's saying is that maybe Google isn't going about it the right way by shutting up everyone who doesn't think like them. Right, so you have to be in that little box of social justice warriors where everybody's a victim who is non-white and male. And so women are definitely victims of Silicon Valley, black people, any sort of minority they're all, you know, and Google makes people go through diversity training and all these things. So this guy had this great idea. He'd write a 10-page memo filled with like charts and everything, okay? Explaining maybe a better way to go about diversity and inclusion than just shutting everyone up who doesn't agree with you. And I have no problem with that, but it would seem that the way he got his point across has affected people in a way that makes them really upset. So he actually added this reply. I value diversity and inclusion. Am not denying that sexism exists and don't endorse using stereotypes. When addressing the gap in representation in the population, we're talking about female representation in Silicon Valley, we need to look at population level differences and distributions. If we can't have an honest discussion about this, why women are not equally presented in Silicon Valley 50-50, then we can never truly solve the problem. Psychological safety is built on mutual respect and acceptance, but unfortunately, our culture of shaming and misrepresentation is disrespectful and unaccepting of anyone outside of its echo chamber. Despite what the public response seems to have been, I've gotten many personal messages from fellow Googlers expressing their gratitude for bringing up these very important issues, which they agree with, but would never have the courage to say or defend because of our shaming culture and the possibility of being fired. This needs to change. Now, before anybody gets upset about this whole thing, I would ask you to read it. If you don't want to read it, you can come with us, and I can give you just a few overviews and things I wanted to share with you about this. Now, everybody's upset because he's saying that there's differences between men and women.
Hey, guess what? There's differences between men and women.
And he wanted to give people maybe some different ways of looking at why men are overrepresented in the tech industry. And he says, note, I'm not saying that all men differ from women in the following ways or that these differences are just. I'm simply stating that the distribution of preferences and abilities of men and women differ in part due to biological causes, and what these differences may explain why we don't see equal representation of women in tech and leadership. Many of these differences are small, and there's significant overlap between men and women, so you can't say anything about an individual given these population level distributions. Now, he gives some ideas that women are more collaborative and personable and want to talk and be with people, and that the tech industry is more loner and kind of lonely. And so he gave that as maybe his reasoning, or a reason.
I think that is a very valid reason.
But the women in Google, a lot of them were so upset about this and said, dang gummit, I'm not over emotional, and you know, to prove it, I am going to stay home from work today because I am so angry that this man wrote this 10-page manifesto. So, it's pretty upsetting. Now, I'm going to go through some of these tweets here that I tweeted out that I thought kind of gave us a good round look at this. CNN says the Google engineer who wrote a memo that argued women aren't biologically fit for tech jobs is out of the company now. That is a blatant lie. That is CNN, and that is fake news. He never said, his whole manifesto is about, hey, maybe we should have some collaborative tech jobs. Maybe women might want to pair up to work on things. Now, maybe that might not work for all the things in tech, but maybe they might want to be collaborative and pair up. And maybe because they are having children, maybe they can't do full-time. Maybe they could work part-time.
Or from home.
Or from home. So he's like writing all these different things. And you might not agree with how he's saying it, but it's just funny. This one was funny to me. This woman says, I'm going to start this little GIF thing. One of our employees says there are differences between men and women. Here's the scientific evidence we'll be ignoring that shows that that's correct. And here's this termination letter. Thank you. I will deliver it to him personally. Google, please express yourself individually here. Damore, I've got a memo. Google, you will be destroyed for the sake of the collective. This is the conclusion of the so-called anti-diversity memo that got James Damore fired. You can read it.
I hope it's clear that I'm not saying that diversity is bad, that Google or society is 100% fair, that we shouldn't try to correct for existing biases, or that minorities have the same experience of those in the majority. My larger point is that we have an intolerance for ideas and evidence that don't fit a certain ideology. I'm also not saying that we should restrict people to certain gender roles. I'm advocating for quite the opposite. Treat people as individuals, not as just another member of their group, which is tribalism.
Right. So this was funny too. College encourages lively exchange of idea. Students, faculty invited to freely express single viewpoint. And pretty much that's what they do, isn't it?
Yep.
And everything is about censorship. And what I love about this is Julian Assange went out and he tweeted like 5 or 7 tweets about this guy. And his first one says, censorship is for losers. WikiLeaks is offering a job to fired Google engineer James Damore.
I love it. You gotta love Julian Assange. He knows how to make us.
But I have to tell you that WikiLeaks, I would say 80% has some positive tweets on this. This is like the transgender mess where everyone can see it who has a thinking mind, but you still have the social justice warriors who are like, they want to claw people's eyes out, and anytime they see some sort of, well, did you hear him say that women and men are different biologically?
So,
did you hear him?
Here's my question to... Wow, that's really scary. Here's my question that might turn the social justice warriors' head on tilt. You guys so advocate for transgenders to be able to switch biologies, and you're so defensive of homosexuals and things like that. Well, I gotta tell you something. If you are transgender or you are homosexual, you feel very strongly that you are a gender that is different than the gender that you are. So guess what? Even the transgenders and the homosexuals feel strongly that there's a difference between men and women. So that's kind of like one of those
That's a mic drop. That is it. We're done. We're done here. We're done. You just explained it all.
Just saying.
We're done.
I'm a man that I feel like I am a woman. Well, who cares if there's no daggone difference? We're all unisex. If there is no difference between men and women inside, because these people, they don't just feel that the transgender part of them is a biological difference. What they're saying is inside, my emotions are female or male or whatever. I need to have
long hair. I need to put on
because I feel like a woman.
Whatever that means. Whatever that means. Well, obviously it means something to someone, but if you're in Google world, it only means it when you're trying to change genders, but if you're trying to be a woman in the tech job, you're just as equal. It's just the same as everything else.
Here he was talking about women being a collective, right? We were talking earlier, and I was actually talking to a friend of mine the other day. I was talking up, it was a male friend on the phone, and we were talking about how women have a lot to say. And he said that's okay because we don't always have a lot to say, and so it's nice that you guys fill in the gap, and you got plenty to fill in the gaps with. Now, the stereotype in all of the movies, which the homosexuals really like to put forward, even Milo does this, like to put forward the fact that many homosexual men are very outgoing. They love social settings, and they love to talk a lot. All right? They love to have their girlfriends, and they love to have their groups. And so if the homosexual male population generally, and I'm not saying always, but generally views that as the female role, are you guys, the social justice warriors, saying that they're wrong?
It's so weird. It's so weird. Julian Assange tweeted this out. Shut up and think. While the taboo of the day may change, the fate of workers under cognitive capitalism remains the same. And he goes on to say men and women need respect. That includes not firing them for politely expressing ideas, but rather arguing back. And somebody gave a good write-up, 5 fast facts that you need to know about the memo. Now, he published this and actually kind of like shut down the servers or something because everybody was trying to read it.
You know what though?
It went viral
exactly
internal.
That it shut down the servers. I think the servers were shut down.
James Damore accused Google of silencing conservative opinions and argued biological differences play a role in the shortage of women in tech. And we're actually, I think we might sign off here, and then I'm going to kind of do a little bit a thing on that. He wrote a 10-page, 3,300-word manifesto. And he says, Google's political bias has equated the freedom from offense with psychological safety, but shaming into silence is the antithesis of psychological safety. This silencing has created an ideological echo chamber where some ideas are too secret to be honestly discussed. The lack of discussion fosters the most extreme and authoritarian elements of this ideology. Now, there's another guy who literally has a blacklist of people who says, if I will not work with you because you're kind of right wing or you have these kind of ideology, ways of thinking. He added, differences in distributions of traits between men and women may in part explain why we don't have 50% representation of women in tech and leadership. Discrimination to reach equal representation is unfair, divisive, and bad for business. So that's his basis.
And what he was trying to get to is the fact that he felt that women should be more represented in the tech industry, and he thought, how can we cater to that to make it happen?
So he says, at Google, we talk so much about unconscious bias as it applies to race and gender, but we rarely discuss our moral biases. Political orientation is actually a result of deep moral preferences and thus biases. Considering that the overwhelming majority of the social sciences, media, and Google lean left, we should critically examine these prejudices, which is totally correct. We don't recognize that you have a political minority that you are ousting out, just like you're
accusing the right of doing.
Right. He wrote that neither side is 100% correct, but he believes Google leans too far to the left. Only fact and reason can shed light on these biases, but when it comes to diversity and inclusion, Google's left bias has created a politically correct monoculture that maintains its hold by shaming dissenters into silence. This silence removes any checks against encroaching extremists and authoritarian policies. And just recognize that WikiLeaks put this out, and they got a lot of flack because they're like, what, are you shilling for the right now? WikiLeaks is not about right or left, and that's the problem. The left felt like WikiLeaks was theirs, right? That they owned it, that WikiLeaks was out to get Bush and everybody on the right and everything like that. But WikiLeaks is about the truth and whistleblowers and people talking about things inside of companies.
You should be allowed to speak whatever you want to speak. as long as someone doesn't physically get harmed.
Right.
All right? It's that simple. And you know what? Your little crybaby offensives don't count as, you hurt my feelings. That's not physically harming to you.
Now, he goes on to say the two differences in part explain why women relatively prefer jobs in social or artistic areas. More men may like coding because it requires systemizing, and even within SWEs, I don't know what that is. Comparatively, more women work on the front end, which deals with both people and aesthetics, saying women on average have more. And it's just a difference of...
and he uses the phrases like on average, okay? So you can't just appeal to, you know what, there are women out there that are techie women, and they are focused, and they are centered, and they just want to kind of be alone, just kind of like the techie guys. They exist, but they're not in mass. And so if you want to draw more women in, you have to open it up to what the average woman is like.
So he's talking about men have more of a drive, and women might not have that same drive because these kind of positions require stressful hours, long hours, and it's just something that he says it's overall. It's not. Right. This is a generalization.
I gotta tell you guys something, because we're talking just specifically about tech jobs. All right. Leah and I are farmers and homesteaders, and we can work with the best of them from sun up to sundown. Right. But our friend Kansas, who we were hoping would come up here so that we could give you kind of a funny bit of the differences between men and women, he can work us under the table. All right. He could be out there earlier than I'll get out, and later than later. All right. He does have to stop and get water and food occasionally, but he has that drive, and it's not just that is a personality. He can just do it more than we can, and we have a drive, and we are farmers, and obviously, you know, Leah's got a farm girl shirt on. But there is just something about the male that usually, and not always, I gotta tell you something, I'm not gonna put all y'all men in this same box, because some of y'all just lazy couch potatoes, okay? Right. But by and large, men have that drive to go out and work and do kind of a physical job that requires stamina that even we as women don't have. This crosses emotions, it crosses feelings, and even physical barriers. It's just, there are big differences.
So he was fired, and the Google exec said the memo has clearly impacted our coworkers, some of whom are hurting.
Oh my gosh.
And feel judged based on their gender.
Stop it.
Our coworkers shouldn't have to worry that each time they open their mouths to speak in a meeting, they will have to prove that they are not like the memo states, being agreeable rather than assertive, showing a lower stress tolerance, or being neurotic. So I'm gonna link to all these different things, and you can make up your own silly mind. But at the end of the day, I wish that Kansas were here, because how many guys, how many dudes out there would grab another dude and say, hey,
let's go to the bathroom. I have to go to the bathroom. Go to the bathroom with me?
You know?
That's gonna happen.
Hey, and Michelle, how many times have you done that in your life?
A few.
That's just something.
Sometimes you don't want to go to the bathroom by yourself.
And sometimes what happens is like somebody's gonna go, and you're like, oh, I have to go too. Let's go. Let's all go. You gotta go? Okay, let's all go. And then like 20 people go to the bathroom. Okay, there's just differences between men and women and how they think. And this guy has obviously thought them through a little bit. And he was like way over the top, more than I would have expected anybody to go. I don't mean to be offensive. Women are great.
We want diversity. About what he was saying.
Blah, 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 blah. I love people, but maybe the way we talk about these things, and he's like tiptoeing on all of it. Dude, if it were me writing it, I would have been fired. I can't work. I could never work.
Earlier today, we were coming up with lots of different differences between men and women, and one of the things that she said was, men, raise your hand if once a month or randomly you just cry for 3 days. Or you just feel off emotionally, and you're either angry or sad or frustrated. Does that ever happen to you?
But that goes into the transgenderism too. So when the male's taking female hormones, what did I have seen so many say? My emotions were just a wreck. Right. Just a wreck because I was taking female hormones because it was making me female-y. Like more like a female. It's so crazy. It's so weird, and I just feel bad for the guy. He's gonna sue. I say sue their pants off, take their money, and run and start your own company.
if you're going to be prejudiced against the right, or whatever you want to call us, or whatever, just call them the right and the left. It's the easiest thing to do. If the left is going to be prejudiced against the right, saying you guys are prejudiced, let's say, use an example, abortion. We believe that abortion is wrong. You should not kill your baby. That is harming another person. Okay, how come you're allowed to be prejudiced against us when we believe that somebody's actually physically killing someone, but
what if somebody
but you're allowed to be prejudiced against people? It doesn't, it's circular reasoning.
Yeah, it goes, yeah, it's just the SJW mindset of today. And guess what? You're losing, because on Twitter you have lost the battle. You may have won the mainstream media battle, but you know what? That's not a star. You didn't actually win anything. So stick with us, and I'm going to do this tiny little episode to show, talk about girls in the STEM,
whatever that is. Yep.
Science, technology,
and mathematics.
Mathematics.
All right, we love you guys. This is Leah Michelle signing off for Resistant Chicks, where it is not just a conspiracy theory. If it's the truth, like, comment, subscribe, share these on your social media pages. We love you. God loves you, and God bless.
I was cold.